All right.
Good. Okay, thank you.
Great. So welcome, everybody. I'm going to share my screen. Maybe. I lost my, here we go. Can you all see that? Looks like a slide. Excellent. So welcome, everybody, to Ann Arbor Solar Stories. This is an event that's put on once a month, hosted by the GLREA, and I am your other host, I suppose. I'm Julie Roth. I'm Senior Energy Analyst at the Office of Sustainability and Innovations at the City of Ann Arbor. And our speaker tonight, who will be on in just a minute, is Charles Roth. No relation to myself, but we are very excited and happy to have him. He's got a year's worth of solar data. Now that he's had solar for a year, he got up through the Solarize program in Ann Arbor, and he's very techie. So I think he's going to share some interesting things with us. The program is financially sponsored by the Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy, or EGLE, by Homeland Solar, by McNaught-McKay Electric Company, Iron Ridge Racking, and Harvest Solar. So thank you to the sponsors that make this possible. So just so you know, in case you're new to these series, there are multiple GLREA Zoom programs. The first Thursday of every month is this, Ann Arbor Solar Stories, hosted by yours truly. The second Thursday of each month is a clean energy seminar. And this is hosted by GLREA Vice President Mark Clevey. And it's can be any number of topics, and can be policy, can be politics, can be technical. They're fantastic. So I highly recommend you take a look at what they produce. The third Thursday of every month is Detroit Solar Stories, hosted by Diane Van Buren. And the fourth is either a My Solar Story from somewhere around the state, or an energy Q&A, where you can come and hang out with a bunch of wonky energy people and ask all your wonky or naive energy questions. And they are just thrilled to help answer them. The GLREA is a 501c3 nonprofit. It was formed in 1991 and supported by members. And its purpose is to educate and advocate for renewable energy in the Great Lakes. And they do both. That this series is only one of the many things that the GLREA does. We need an awful lot of advocacy and pushback in Lansing these days. And the GLREA is right there at the front of all of it. They are advocating and fundraising for programs to support renewable energy, to spread the education about solar and renewable energy, and to push for policies that are supportive. They're a trade organization as well in terms of supporting their member contractors. So really fantastic organization. There are ways to help the GLREA. You can become a member if you're not, which I highly advocate. You can financially sponsor a GLREA membership for a local teacher or student who you think might be interested. Tell other people about these series and ways to get involved. And of course, you can just make a financial donation if you want and give them money. They will always take everybody's money and do good work with it. So that's the whole advertisement part at the beginning that I have to share. I'm really glad you're all here. I didn't mention, but I run as in my work position, one of the things I do is I run the Solarize program in Ann Arbor, which is a residential solar group buy program that helps residents come together with neighbors and community members to learn about solar and get discounts as part of a group buy. And that, I think, is how Charles first engaged in his solar project. So Charles, with no further ado, I'm just going to hand it over to you.
Can you put these in the fridge?
Yes, I can.
Well, Jennifer, I think, oh, yep, you're now muted. And Jen's is also unmuted right now. Make sure you're all muted, or we might hear things you don't want us to hear.
Well, on that note, welcome everyone. My name is Charles Roth, and not only am I a techie, but I'm also a little bit of a singer and musician as well. So I thought we'd lead in with this.
One day the sun's gonna shine. One day the sun's gonna shine. If you believe it could happen anytime. One day the sun's gonna shine.
So as you can imagine, that is a view of our house with our lovely solar panels from a little drone I flew over the house. The musical credits are Zoe Mulford, a musician I highly recommend. And I want to say a few words about where we came from and how we got here. I was a science fiction fan and engineer from a very tender age. Tom Swift was some of the first books I read. His Space Solartron converts solar energy into matter to like feed them on space voyages. That's me building a rechargeable battery array way back when. My wife also, who is for many years was a pastor with Presbyterian Church USA. When you become a pastor, there's something like a doctoral dissertation committee, only it's got like 150 people in it. And she gave a presentation about her background and faith and included the importance of us being proper stewards of the earth, which was very unusual in those days and got her some pushback, but she stuck with it. So both of us come from a place of, really wanting to do something about renewable energy and the earth in general. I'm also somewhat of a political activist. This is from 2018, the anti-gerrymandering proposal, dressed as my lookalike Uncle Sam. Anyway, I'm going to flip back and forth between a few slides here. And oops, except this thing keeps wanting to, there we go. And my speaking notes. Very briefly, what we did, we put in a 10 kilowatt array, which I just discovered is about roughly the equivalent of 13 horsepower, to put it in a completely different context. About $20,000. We didn't put a battery in. We covered most of the roof. We're really glad we did it. It's not paying off quite as much as we hoped, but we have plans to improve that. And we might even get a used electric car, and because we have short commutes for when we actually go to work. How we got here, as Julie referenced, it was a neighborhood presentation from the Ann Arbor Solarize. I guess the city office now. Well, Julie, you can comment on that later, I guess. We live in a very active community called Forest Brook. There is a community pool here that is kind of a magnet for both people moving into this area, but also a magnet socially. So this is a very well-connected neighborhood. So when my wife, through the very effective neighborhood grapevine, learned that there was going to be a presentation about this neighborhood Solarize, she was extremely interested. She gathered all the data and we started looking into it. The funny part about this was that, and again, Julie can correct me later, the Solarize program works in that they get a vendor to go into a neighborhood and do presentations. And then if enough people in the neighborhood sign up, the vendor gives them a discount. And I think it was on the order of 10%. I don't remember exactly. But that's significant. That vendor was Oak Electric. Accidentally, and we still don't know how this happened, we actually got a second vendor, Homeland Solar, who apparently thought we were in the neighborhood that they were doing, but we weren't, but they showed up anyway. And we ended up liking them better. I've got some very crude numbers up there in terms of what their proposals were. The Oak Electric equipment seemed to be somewhat superior in the sense of higher power, higher efficiency of panels, somewhat longer warranties. On the other hand, we're in our mid 60s. We're idealists, but and we're still paying off a daughter who's just graduating from college. So we went with the cheaper option. I also found Homeland to be a little more realistic in the sense of just talking straight. I'm an engineer, scientist, mathematician. I understand numbers. Oak was a little more salesy. I don't want to put them down in that sense because I think that their equipment actually is arguably superior. If I were 20 years younger, I would probably have gone with Oak and a battery, but I'm not. Let's see. It's time to show something. Oh, Julie, there it is. Okay, the control bar was getting in the way of my. Here we are. So, regardless of who you go through, there are lots of interesting tools you can get to see just how good your panels are working. And this is a SolarEdge monitor. It's beautiful. It's a nice, simple web interface. This is just a screenshot. And this is a near peak day. The installation was in late July last year. So we're actually going on about 9.5 months of data. We don't quite have a year yet, and I'm looking forward to see what year over year looks like. But you can see the blips, those are clouds. We got near our theoretical maximum of 10 kilowatts that day. We're like 9.6. In contrast, here's a cloudless day, almost a perfect sine wave. But it's just lovely to be able to see this. And then here's the overall, the best news of everything. This is the summation by month. So you can see we're still missing a couple of months in between here of how much energy we're producing. And they give you this very cute, but also very inspiring little environment benefits. How many thousands of pounds of carbon dioxide emissions have been saved and what the equivalent is in terms of planting of trees, which is actually kind of cool, even if it's cute. So that's the overall good news. The installation experience was pretty good. My wife, being the relationship builder, was very concerned that if we went with a different vendor other than Oak, would all the rest of the neighbors still get their discount? And the answer was yes. So we were safe to proceed with Homeland. We did not get the discount, but the price difference between the two was enough to make it well worth it. From start to finish, it was about 3 months from when we signed to actually generating power and putting it on the grid. This is during, well, we're still in pandemic, but this is during peak pandemic. So that was not shocking. Again, Julie, maybe you can speak to later what other people's experience are. We were impatient, but everybody, well, almost everybody, DTE was a little problematic, just in terms of some paperwork going the wrong place, but everybody else was really great about it. The installers were wonderful. I have to say, during a pandemic, they were cheery. It was a very hot day. They were very respectful. I brought out tons and tons of water and ice for them, just because they deserved it. And we've had no problems since then so far. I mean, it's early, but knock on wood, everything looks great. The only thing about the overall installation and setup, and this is not unique to us, this is common to everybody, it's really hard to measure how much power we're sending out to DTE. I can tell you exactly in hourly increments and in 15-minute increments how much power the solar panels are making. I can tell you in hourly increments how much power we're using from DTE, but I can't tell how much of what we make we're using, which is the negative of how much we're actually sending back to DTE. The only numbers I can get easily are by month. DTE tells us every month what our outflow credit is, which is, it's good, but there are some hacks to get around that. I'm forgetting her name, but another person that Julie put me in touch with sent me information about the DTE Insight app, which you can use manually once a day to write down your outflow. I'm not that disciplined. I started experimenting with having a camera outside the meter because your meter will tell you that if you look at it, but you have to go out in the meter and look at it or rig up a camera to send you pictures of it, which I experimented with but did not complete. Or there's and I'm not remembering the cost, but thinking was on the order of about $400. There's another box you can buy to put on your system that will also send you those reports. And I was another $400 I would just throw at the loan, but I'll speak about the loan a little more. So what I've done, now I think I can flip back here. Since I can't measure exactly what I did, the closest thing I could do is compare last year's numbers with this year's numbers. So this orange and blue graph is the number of kilowatt hours per month that I've used from DTE year over year. So the orange is last year, not calendar year, but year. So like August until, well, May. Orange is before the solar panels, blue is after the solar panels. And so a negative number means that's the rough approximate equivalent outflow, how much I'm sending back. Well, when it's negative, excuse me. I'm sorry, I'll read that again, as the old British comedy show used to say. Orange is the previous year, blue is the current year with panels. That's the amount of power I'm using from DTE. When the blue bars go negative, that means I'm actually not using that power, I'm sending it back to DTE. So that's actually a very impressive graph when you look at it in total. The panels have made a huge difference in terms of the amount of power I'm using versus sending back. That sounds great. But, and as you can see already, the bad news is when you translate that into dollars, and this is again, red is the previous year, green is this year. When you translate it into dollars, and that's dollars for our entire utility, we have electric, we have interruptible electric, which powers our hot water heater. More about that anon. And gas. So I threw that into the mix too. The green numbers are clearly better. And of course, I'm making this huge assumption that last year is comparable to this year, but it's the closest I can come to, coming up with at least approximate numbers. So the green numbers are substantially better, but they're not as better as I would like them to be. And they're not as better as I was estimating based on my original conversations with both vendors. Let me see. I'm getting ahead of myself there. Okay. So for those of you who love numbers, and I love numbers, this is a summary of DTE's fee schedule. And it looks complicated, but a lot of those numbers are actually the same across. Basically, we have three ways to measure power. We have the peak times when DTE charges more for the power, which makes a certain amount of sense. The off-peak times where they charge less, and the interruptible service where if their load is too high, they can just say, you know what, we're not sending any power to that line. And that's why a hot water heater is a great thing to put on that line, because hot water stays hot for quite a while. So it doesn't have to be on all the time. So they charge less for that. 6 cents for peak, 4 cents for off peak, and 2 cents for interruptible, roughly speaking. But DTE charges what they call a capacity charge and then a non-capacity charge. explaining that is complicated. A cost recovery charge, all of these are cents per kilowatt hour. So the cost recovery for the actual fuel that they're using to generate some of this power. And then they charge, and this is the big kicker right here, is this distribution. Then they charge about 6 cents an hour or a kilowatt hour to send you that power. And now that's okay, that's fair that they have a distribution network that costs them money to build and maintain. But basically the distribution cost is well over a third of the total cost of the energy coming to you. The outflow credit here at the bottom. So if you're actually sending power back into the grid, you are more or less, and there's lots of politics behind this, but you're more or less earning the same rate that you would pay to buy the electricity, not counting the cost. We've got somebody. Oh, hi, Laura.
Ready.
Laura, could you go on mute? Thank you. Good to see you, by the way. You're getting credit for about the same price of the power they want to sell you, except for the distribution cost, which also sort of makes sense. And I have this long ramble here that I'm not going to go into detail, and if we have time at the end, I can save it. But there's been lots and lots of arguments about this. Very, very briefly, it used to be net metering. Power in, power out, same thing. Done. DTE didn't like that for possibly understandable reasons. They wanted a lot more. The Public Service Commission sort of split the baby. And now we have the fee schedule that I showed up there at the top. I'm not going to go into the rest of that at the moment. Let me see what else in notes. Yeah, okay. Paying it off, the important part for everybody. I'm going to bump up the font a little bit here. So it was about $20,000. That's a 10 kilowatt system, which is pretty big for a house. But we have a perfectly situated roof in terms of exposure, direction, and lack of shade. So we went with it. We put $2,000 deposit, most of which came from COVID stimulus payments. So that was kind of like, it's a feel-good way in both directions. We're putting that money straight back into the economy. We did get the $5,000 approximately federal tax rebate. That was wonderful. We filed early to make sure we could get that right away. The rest is a loan through the Michigan Saves program. They have a couple of different vendors. We picked Lake Michigan Credit Union that we've been very happy to work with, 4.25% fixed. That's a little higher than some of our loans, but it's not too bad. Here's the important part. So I only have 9 months of data. And if I average out our total cost savings over those 9 months, it's $78 a month. That's not as much as I would like. It'll probably be higher because the months that we have yet to gather data for are some of the best solar producing months of the year. So it's definitely going to improve. I'm not even going to try and guess how much. We did used to opt into the Michigan Greens Power Program, which seemed to be costing us about $8 a month. Obviously, we turned that off once we put in our own solar program. So in that sense, we're saving $86 a month. And here's the math for how to pay off that $13,000 of loan. 18 years, not real good. Now I'm going to jump ahead here. So I keep mentioning this interruptible power line that powers our hot water heater. We weren't sure what to do about that at the outset. And we knew that we could always change our minds because it's cheaper It's cheaper than the regular power. It's like 2 cents compared to 6 cents, but you pay the distribution cost too. So it's more like 8 cents versus the other number was, 13, 14. At this point, it seems pretty clear that we should have and are going to reroute our hot water heater into the main power line, because frankly, we're producing too much power. If you make more power in a given month than you use, DTE credits you with an excess generation bank, and that money piles up. And then when you get into the winter and you make less than you use, they use those credits. Okay, that's great. But even after 9 months, our excess credit is going to keep going up. And Julie, maybe you can speak to that later. I don't know how we're going to get that money back. So we are going to add the hot water heater over. The scientist and tinkerer in me is going to experiment with hooking the hot water heater.
Hi, are you just getting one of the books out of the locker?
Hi, Mary. Glad. Thank you.
Oh, am I not muted? I'm so sorry.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for fixing that. Sorry, brain. So I'm going to experiment with hooking up the hot water heater to our main electric line, and then putting a timer on it so that it only draws power during the day when the sun is shining. Michigan, you never know exactly when that's going to be, but the odds are good. I did run a very brief experiment where I simply disconnected the hot water heater at night. We took our showers in the morning. We had hot water. I plugged it back in. That's all I know. It was in September. So there's lots more daylight than, say, January. But I will be running that experiment, and we'll report it back. I made a guesstimate. Finally, that's bringing me back here to these numbers. I made a guesstimate looking at the numbers for the hot water heater, and this is very much a wild guess, of 100, that the net savings would be 111 a month. That brings the repayment on that loan down to 12.6 years, which is smack in the middle of what both vendors told us to expect, 10 to 15 years to repay off the system, given the load history that we have. So if this all works, I'll be very happy. In the meantime, because I'm fortunate, because I've got this fancy dancy senior software architect title at work, we're paying off $200 a month regardless. I'm not going to wait. I don't like interest. And then finally, about money, ironically, so the Michigan Saves program put us in, we selected the vendor of Lake Michigan Credit Union. Turns out that they have a 3%, they have a checking account that offers 3% up to a certain amount of money. But you have to use their credit card 10 times a month. So I got their credit card and I use it 10 times per month for the smallest possible thing. So the net effect of this is we're really only paying about 1.25%. Because of the money, we moved our emergency savings out of a savings account that was 0.5% to their checking account, which is 3%. And I'm very happy. So that was an unexpected bonus of this whole Michigan Saves and Ann Arbor Solarize panel. Anyway, enough of the numbers. Let me go back. Oh no, I guess that was.
Thought I seen it was 7:30 there, which I thought was unusual because all the others were 7.
I'm sorry, say again?
Yep.
Oh,
Michael,
hi,
Michael,
Michael.
you are off mute.
Michael, if you could mute. And thank you. Okay. Let's see, there was another thing. Oh, right. Okay. And now I'm back to my random notes. And these are very random. So I'm working from home, which I'm privileged to be able to do. But I'm an extrovert, so working from home is also sort of a pain in the butt. But in terms of safety and everything, I'm very grateful for that. My wife works 3 days a week at as a chaplain, actually, at a St. Joe's Senior Village. So I'm home by myself 3 days a week. During those days, I turn the thermostat down and I heat my office with 4 incandescent light bulbs that I just turned on. So I'm saving on my gas bill for the entire house by heating my one room with electricity. And it's been working extremely well. That's also another way, worst comes to worst, where I might be able to use up my excess generation bank, heat the house in December with incandescent light bulbs and not gas. We'll see. That's a wild experiment for the scientist in me. Even on a cloudy day, this is the one advantage of having such a big solar array. Even on a cloudy day, as long as it's like totally, thunderstorm dark, we're still making about 2 kilowatts. That's nothing to sneeze at. Another funny thing about this set of panels, and I'll take you back to the picture. Well, when it snows, we don't have a huge inclined roof. So when it snows, the snow stays there for a while. And I did some research on different ways people have found to try and get the snow off their panels. And the answer is basically wait for it to melt. Pretty much everything else is either dangerous or likely to damage the solar panels. I even thought about flying my drone over it to blow the snow off the roof, but that's not very effective. The interesting thing is when it does melt, it melts all at once and it slides. So you get these mini avalanches 2 or 3 times during the day. All of a sudden I hear, whoosh. Oh, right. Another pile of snow just slid off the solar panels and landed in the yard. Something to be aware of. Let's see, the drone photos. I do want to use the drones for closer inspection over time, just to see if anything is damaged. We may yet add a battery. If this is not already obvious, for anybody who's putting out more power than they're using, having a battery is great because it just stores it and then you use it at night. It's pretty much a day-night cycle. It's not like you're going to save power in July and use it in December. That would be, we're talking, Elon Musk kind of batteries in that case. But that would be a good way to save. We chose not to go with it. It was pretty expensive, and we can add a battery at any time, and battery prices keep coming down. So we will see. And we found that there was a lot of back and forth about the actual arrangement of the panels. There are fire codes, fire access codes about, if the house is on fire, how they can get to the roof to do whatever it is firemen and women do. So we actually ended up cutting this. We might have added another panel and shifted this all a little bit, but that was not legally available to us. But we're very happy with the stack that's there. And that is about it. To recap, comparing different vendors was very helpful to us, even though it was an accident. The neighborhood program was wonderful because we'd always been interested, but it gave us the kick in the butt that we needed to say, hey, this is actually feasible for us to do in terms of the monetary aspects. Being aware of the lack of measurement of what you're sending out, the difficulties there, and how to estimate all that. And then, how to optimize things like, do you put in a battery? If you've got a separate interruptible line, to merge that in or not. Those are all things to look for anybody who's considering adding solar power. Our sense is that it's easier to add a battery than it is to add more panels. So we chose with full bore linear panels up front, battery maybe some year later. And I think that's it. Julie, do you want to take it from here and or I assume question and answer time?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, Charles. Do you want to stop sharing screen so we can kind of see each other then?
Absolutely.
That was great. That was definitely the most engineering-y presentation that we've had in Ann Arbor Solar Stories, which was great because you get all different kinds of people with their stories. That one was, I don't know if engineering is a
It'll do.
word. Okay. Yeah. And a couple of points of clarification because you called me out a couple times, so I'll clarify. Yes, the Solarize program works with a single vendor in each group buy, but the vendor isn't chosen by the city. So we work with any installer that a resident wants to work with, as long as they are a Michigan Saves affiliated installer, and as long as we haven't kicked them out of the program for poor behavior or something. So, so essentially, a homeowner will come to me and with a chosen installer and say, we want to run a group buy, and that's who offers the group buy. But we always encourage people to get outside bids if they want. And I personally don't care how solar gets up. I just want lots of solar to get up. And so generally the groups meet their targets, get estimates. Some people end up getting outside bids they like better and going that way. And we've gotten over 450 installations up in 2 years, representing we just hit 3 megawatts through the Solarize program. And that's little tiny residential installations. And that's pretty exciting. The other thing was, I don't remember what else you asked or you mentioned my name on.
If the bank is always positive, is there any way to get that money back?
So remind me of the question.
So year over year, we just keep adding power to our excess generation.
Your excess generation bank keeps increasing. That's interesting. So yeah, I don't know. I'm wondering if some of the GLREA, Harvey seems to know. Oh, you don't know. You have the same issue. Actually, I wonder if the Homeland guys on here know, or some of the GLREA guys.
Well, here's something to think about, that you ought to get an electric car, and then you ought to charge the electric car, and that way you won't be exporting much electricity back to DTE, and you'll be saving on gasoline, and you'll be contributing even more to fighting climate change. Mr. Richter's probably got a good point too.
There is exactly one way you can get that back as cash, and that's if you cease being a DTE customer.
Mm.
And the thing about electric cars that we keep forgetting, it's not just gasoline. There aren't many moving parts. There's a lot of repair costs that don't come up.
Right. Yeah, I charge my electric vehicle at home, and I don't have an excess generation bank, I'll tell you that. Because my vehicle is drinking it all up. And I don't even drive that much. So
our first next step is the hot water heater.
The water heater,
Our second next step, and we actually have a buddy who worked in GM's electric vehicle program for many years, who's helping scout for us to get a used, low capacity, cheap electric car for short commutes. So yes, these are all great ideas.
Yeah, that's great. I got to use DV2 is perfect. I had one question. I'm gonna just jump because I'll forget if I don't say it right away, because my brain is like that these days. I'm interested that I think it's really interesting that you chose to use an entire utility bill that was gas and electric and look at the cost difference, because then you're electrifying, right? So you're going from a gas water heater to electric water heater, and you're going to continue to watch that. Most people, when I see do the cost comparison, they're looking at their electric bill. How much did my electric bill come down when I added solar? Because gas is a different, it's a different entity. But I'm really, so you certainly would see less of a dramatic decrease because obviously the solar isn't offsetting your gas bill. But I'm really intrigued. I think it's clever in a lot of ways because if you're planning on electrifying over time, then you're going to watch the whole process. And also I think it's great that you have excess generation because you know, that'll give you the sort of ability to do that without we're still using mostly what you're generating. So anyway.
There is, as I was suggesting earlier, there's more fine tuning we can do in the winter about to what extent can we heat parts of the house with electric instead of gas. But that's why I included the gas in that total, because it's not a hard and fast barrier between the two. We can, as you say, shift to more electrify. And I mean, I'm still pleased with the numbers. And to the extent that I'm not pleased with the numbers, it's more about the hot water heater. But I wanted to include the gas just because there is that sense that I can shift it a bit.
Are you going to get a heat pump water heater?
Well, we had the hot water electric heater in since we bought the house. And it's always been on the interruptible line, which we thought was a great deal. Historically has been a great deal. I think we can make it a better deal. I'm thinking more of, you know, heating individual rooms with either electric heaters or incandescent light bulbs in my case.
Mini splits. Look at mini splits.
Mini split?
Yeah. Sorry, I'm taking over. I'm gonna let Dave go, but mini splits is a heat pump that can you can install. So a heat pump moves heat from one place to another, like your refrigerator, as opposed to an electric resistance heater, like a plug-in space heater, which uses a ton of electricity to heat. A heat pump moves it, and it's very efficient. Like, you're an engineer, you probably understand what it means when you say something's 300% efficient, but I barely understand it. But it's essentially, you can get a mini split, which won't fully replace your gas furnace, but if you have a section or a zone in your home that you want to heat, that you put the head, there's a piece outside, there's a piece inside, and you can heat or cool, because mini splits heat and cool very efficiently in a zone of just right where you need it. Really good option, and it's going to cost a lot less operationally than space heaters.
Interesting, thank you.
But I'll let you continue on with Dave Curtis. It looks like has a question.
Yeah, I just wanted to tell Charles my experience with DTE and their interruptible service, quotation marks in the air. The DTE, my home at the time was under construction, so I was in that meter box several times with qualified electricians, and I saw where DTE technicians disconnected that extra meter box that they said was for controlling my time of hot water usage. During that construction, that was never a separate circuit. So had that meter box been connected, it never would have made a difference relative to the water heater running, which I didn't quite understand, but I think that might be something you might want to look into, just if you could look inside your meter box.
Okay. I mean, I know they're charging me a lower rate for what seems to be mathematically a reasonable amount of hot water, but that's still a good clue.
Sure, and I'm not a numbers cruncher like you are, but I was outside of their usage concerns, I suppose. Just thought I'd mention that as all.
Thank you. Julie, I'm going to let you MC this, so I'll just respond if
No,
appropriate.
that's fine. I was just gonna, mostly been the chats going on and on, but there was, I mean, not on and on, like appropriately, but there's one from Craig Harvey here that I didn't want to get missed, that is a while back, that said, in your app with you have Enphase, right? Is that correct? Your inverter?
I don't remember off the top of my
Whatever
head.
your inverter is, can you see the individual panel output on
Yes, I
your?
can. Yes, I
Yes, you-
can.
Okay, thank you. That was Craig's question. You can continue to MC. I'll just,
No, I can actually call that up and share the screen, but if there's another question in the meantime.
Come on, Julie.
yeah, Laviral. I don't know how to say that. That's a cool looking.
That's very close. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm a 58 electrician. I've been in solar since 2008. I've got a smaller system, 100% self-sustained, electric cars, heat pumps. Getting back to your hot water situation, you definitely want to get rid of that second meter. Your generation credits can never be used for that second meter. They can only be used for the main meter.
Right.
And your idea of the timer is an excellent way to do it. You've got to shift your loads onto your solar. That's where your savings are going to come from.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Laviral, where do you work? Who do you work for?
I actually am retired. I'm retired from Local 58.
Right.
I'm in Solar Currents phase 1 and 2. So I actually generate money, real money from DTE, but they phased all those programs out. I was one of the first to be in the program. And the electric car really helps. I've got a Bolt and that really works. The heat pumps are another great way. I've put in multiple heat pumps. They use so little power. When the sun's out, I run them full bore. I mean, it's just amazing. It's just amazing, those heat pumps. So, and I do have a wind turbine too. And I have solar thermal as well.
Are you doing home tours?
Actually, they did a magazine article on the house. They did a magazine. Yeah. But
sorry.
Solar has gotten so cheap. I just can't believe how cheap it's come down. It's just amazing. And they're getting to the point where these credits they want to give us, they're kind of sad because it's really not money. It's only can used against your single meter. So you've got to use that power yourself or you're not going to really get ahead. That's pretty much it.
Understood. I'm glad for the confirmation. That was the one thing I wasn't sure of, but I have plans for ways to do that.
Oh, I do have one thing to add. Eporium makes an add-on device that will charge your car and only use excess generation. They will switch loads on and off when they see you're exporting. It's not very expensive. It's a beautiful system. I think it's under $200 and it does amazing things.
What's the name of the company?
Eporium, I believe. Eporium. Yeah, if you just go to energy monitors, several different manufacturers will come up, but it is, you can see exactly what's being exported, each circuit that's being, energy is being consumed on. It's just terrific.
Okay. I will look. Thank you.
Yeah.
I still want to make the little camera mounted on the meter, but that's just because I'm a geek.
Dave, I see your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, Charles. I just had a question on your system in general. I was looking at, you have it on both sides of the roof. Is your panels facing east and west or north and south, or,
It's almost due east and due west.
Okay. Is the panels connected in a series connection or are they parallel to each other on both sides of the roof?
That's an excellent question. And the only thing I have to answer it is this diagram from, wait a minute, share. Is this diagram from the Solar Edge monitoring? If you can tell me that from that, I would love to know.
I can't tell from there. The reason why I'm asking is any of these solar panels, when they're connected in series, the best performance you'll get out of all the panels will be whatever the weakest panel's capable of doing.
So the
Unless
term,
you happen to have like micro inverters or something like
the
that.
term microinverters was used in the proposal.
Okay.
And actually the color coding that you see here shows the power from each panel.
Yeah,
So
I
you can
just
see we're
started
getting-
thinking that when I saw the power on each panel, you probably had micro inverters. But
Yeah.
that's a good approach for what you're doing, because otherwise, if they were connected in series, the side that's seeing shadow is going to dictate how much you can get out of the side that's seeing the sun.
Right, right.
Well, this is a good approach. Good. Thank you.
Thank you. I see some questions about the vendors for panels. I can't answer any of that.
Let's see, and I just put for Leviran, Leviral, I can't say it, LC. I just put in a little link. So the IBEW, which is the Ann Arbor and Jackson area, the NECA, the electrical union, is doing a campaign called The Future is Electric, and they're working with us to educate homeowners about what you're going to have to do as you're electrifying your home. So you're not like, wait, what about my panel? I have to upgrade my breaker or whatever. And so I put a link to their website that is all about this. And if you scroll down, there's a video. They're going to start to release a series of videos, homeowner directed, resident directed. The first one's about panel upgrades. But I thought of you, Leviral, because I thought you could probably participate in that and educating homeowners on what it's going to take to as we're preparing to electrify our homes. So that's very fun. I'm trying to look through the chat too to see what else is in here. Jeff Victor says macro news. Slightly related, over the weekend, California generated more carbon-free energy in one day than it needed on that day. Which is kind of cool. Oh, I see Tom. Tom's got his actual hand up. Go ahead, Tom.
I can't find the other button. Thank you. I just wanted to add that we're up 2 weeks now, and we were a part of the Ann Arbor Solarize program. We are not in Ann Arbor. We're in Washtenaw County. We're west of Ann Arbor, out here in the country between Dexter and Chelsea. But we were part of a Solarize group, and that has worked very well. We've been very satisfied and appreciate, Julie, the efforts that you guys have made with your program. It's been an excellent activity. We still aren't ready to really understand exactly what's happening, but in this first 2 weeks, I would say we have over-generated quite a lot. We have an on-ground system on our barn, behind our barn, and it's a 24-panel system, and we've got N-phase equipment and so forth. But it's been excellent, and as I say, I'm surprised. I'll be interested at the first DTE bill that we get, because it's really hard to say. We are for one, a situation where we've got 2 meters. So we have a water meter that's separate from the electric meter, and that I suspect may cost more this month than our house. And we have a big bill usually. I mean, we were getting a year ago or so, we were getting $300 to $400 a month bills on our electric system. And I would guess that we're way down below that right now, because so it's been an excellent, it wasn't inexpensive, but it was an excellent opportunity. So thank you.
That's great, Tom. Thank you for sharing that. That's really exciting. It's so fun when it goes live. My own solar system, when I got it put in, went live in the beginning of February. And I got my first DTE bill and I was like, what did I just do? Like, I spent all this money and like, really? But it was February and it was a really gray and snowy and miserable February. So by the time April, May, June came around, I was like, oh, okay. And then the following February was much better because I had excess generation that got applied to my winter because I wasn't using it all in the summer. So you turned yours on in a much better month for enthusiasm. Yeah, that's great.
One tiny note that reminded me of, for people who are thinking about doing solar panels on the roof, is to get the state of your roof checked out first. I think all the vendors will tell you that, but it's worth reminding. We ironically had not that many years before put new shingles on with a lighter toned, higher reflective, I don't know the right words, but the stuff that they put on the shingles, with the idea of being an energy saver by reflecting more heat. That is now largely irrelevant. But I've also been told, and Julie, maybe you can speak to this too, that especially in a situation like ours, where a lot of the roof is covered by panels, that also tends to extend the effective lifetime of the roof because the shingles are just not taking as much wear and tear, rain, snow, sleet, etc.
This is John Freeman. And just to add on to that comment, if in fact you need to make repairs in order to install your solar system, you are allowed to deduct a portion of the cost of fixing the roof. You're allowed to include that in the investment tax credit. You have to be careful though. It's a little more complex than just taking a straight 26% from the cost of the solar system, but you can, add part of that cost onto your investment tax credit too. And by the way, the investment tax credit is 26% this year. If nothing happens at the federal level, it's going to go down to 22% next January 1st. So if you're interested in getting solar, and this is the year to do it in order to maximize your investment tax credit savings.
Thanks for that reminder, John. I forget to mention that. And I think we have time for one more last question, and I think it's Lee.
Yeah, so I heard you guys talking about electrifying your house, switching things to electric, and the possibility that you might have to increase the size of your load center in the house. Does anyone that's on the call today have any experience with circuit sharing, where two appliances, maybe your car and your clothes dryer or your oven and your water heater, are tied to the same circuit, and that switch decides which one has priority? And that way you can avoid increasing the size of your load center, and you can also reduce your peak load if the power company ever decides to charge you for peak load. But I have no experience with it, so I'm asking if anyone else online has that experience.
Lavero?
Yes, I do have experience with that. You have to have a manual transfer switch, so there's no possible way both loads could ever come on at the same time. So that's the only thing that's really required. And those generally run about $90, those switches. They're pretty heavy duty, but you can do that with any kind of load. And like I was saying before, some of those smart systems do that automatically for you. They will look at what you're exporting and switch loads on and off accordingly. So,
yeah, that's
you.
great.
Yep.
There's a concept that I've been learning more about that has to something along the lines of load diet or amp diet, where instead of just continually increasing your panel capacity, that you're being more strategic and thoughtful about how much you actually need. And there's something called the Pocket Guide to Electrification, which is hilarious because it's like 300 pages. And I don't know any pocket guide that's ever, I don't even know what that means. And also it's written in California, so the weather's different. So it doesn't all the way apply, but there's a section in there about this specific issue about load diet, which is really interesting. And I'm reading it repetitively to as a non-engineer to try to integrate it. Also, for those of you interested in electrification, we at the Ann Arbor website, you can go to annarbor.gov, a2gov.org, /electrify, and a2gov.org/heat pumps. And we have a ton of information accumulated, links to really good buyer's guides and information to help people navigate this. We have a program with Michigan Saves that we developed, so you can help you find contractors that know about electrification, because not all of them do, and not all of them are competent to help in this. And that's all that information's on our website. And then of course the Solarize is a2gov.org/solar. You see the pattern? So you can go to electrify, heat pumps, or solar. And we've been trying to keep that robust with good information for residents. So, but I think we are at time. We are 2 minutes over time, but wow, Charles, thank you for the engineering presentation. It was fascinating. And clearly you've kept everyone's attention, which means maybe we have an entire meeting full of engineers. I'm not sure. That was awesome. Thank you for diving deep into the data, and thank you to everybody for coming and spending an hour to talk about this and listen to Charles. Charles, you're paying it forward, because there's no doubt that you talking about your solar and your experience will trigger other people to look into it. And that is how we spread the good kind of viral, which is what gets me up every single day, is the good kind of viral. So thank you. And thanks to the GLREA as always.